when you guys have a big win like you did last night, I can only imagine the amount of optimism that spreads in your community.
Oh, for sure. I mean, anytime you're on the right side of the Battle of Ontario, there's excitement and coaching and playing in the Canadian market. Uh, it's amazing the highs and lows that you can go throughout a year. But I guess it's our kind of job as coaches to kind of keep that steady on the rudder, never too high, never too low, because it's definitely a humbling league. Um, and you really are never as good as you think you are, and you're never as bad as you think you are. So
That's
I
well
think for
said.
us,
Yeah.
it's just the consistency day to day, and having realistic expectations and kind of being process driven is the best way to put it.
So what happens? I mean, you guys play the Leafs 3-0 win on a Tuesday night. You play again on the Thursday. So as quick as a turnaround as that is, that's not atypical in the league that you're in. After the post game celebrations take place, which I imagine are very brief. What happens next between the end of that game and when puck drops on Thursday, from a coaching
Yeah,
standpoint?
yeah. You have to enjoy uh, your wins and losses, or your wins, I should say, and not fret really on your losses. Like this league, it's every other day. You're playing a game, and we obviously enjoyed the one last night briefly, but now it's on to Philadelphia, and there's no easy games in this league. There's so much parity nowadays. Anyone can beat anyone on any given night. Today, we've practiced hard the last couple days in between games, and so we gave the guys a day off the ice today. Had a team meeting. We're big on game reviews just to continue to kind of grow our identity and build the structure that we want to have. And our players have been awesome, working through, the first part of the season and how we want to play and the standards and our expectations that we have as a staff and they have of each other. Um, but I guess the long short of it is you enjoy it briefly last night. Now we're on to Philadelphia. You're kind of always working ahead from a coaching perspective. So just pre-scout wise and, handling our 5-on-5 and our structure, what we feel we need to get better at and addressing those certain areas and trying to prepare for what Philadelphia is going to bring in tomorrow night.
I know you can't share a whole bunch, but I think we'd just be curious from you talk about those details and perhaps the metrics that might support your team playing consistently and playing to their identity. When you're reviewing those games, what are some things, win or lose, that you're looking for to say, hey, if we're doing these things, shift in and shift out, we feel that you know, over time, we're going to have success.
Yeah, I think when you look at any group for that matter, but specifically with our group, like we have some serious skill in our lineup. We've got good goaltending. We got some real good players on the back end. For our identity, for when we're playing well, and when we give ourselves the best chance to win is, when we're playing structured, we kind of have a checking mindset. We're playing above you and we're playing through you. I don't think it's overly natural for our group, top to bottom, to kind of embrace that brand of hockey, but it's something that Greener's kind of come in here and shaped the way that we want to play. And our players, especially the last couple of games, have really embraced that, and they've seen results because of it. I think if you watch our last two games, we're on the right side of piles. We're playing through people. Our competing, our work ethic have been exceptional, and it's nice to see the players get rewarded for it.
When you're selling that message, when you say it's not natural, that makes total sense. But at the end of the day, when it gets down to four teams or two teams in your league, it would appear that all those teams at some point had to adopt an above and through you type of mentality. How much of that sales pitch is looking at the success of other teams and maybe highlighting that, if the goal is to be one of those last couple of teams standing, that this is a process that, at least today, it would appear you have to go through.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the evolution of any team for that matter. Like you look at Florida last year and the skill that they had up and down their roster, but how hard they consistently played and how predictable they played, and they play through people. And not, I mean, 3 years ago probably, when they finished with all those points, finished first in the league, they had some
Yeah.
high end skill, but they just didn't go anywhere. In the first round, they obviously made that trade with Kachuk. It kind of changed their culture a little bit. Brought in new coaching staff, and I think at the end of the day, the NHL is a copycat league, and um, the teams that have the most skill, that play the hardest, and are the best structure usually end up on top at the end of the year. And I think Florida is a perfect example of that over the last couple of years, and kind of the evolution that they went through as a group to get to ultimately the ultimate prize.
How much do you have to adopt predictability? Because obviously, you mentioned it. You guys are ahead on your pre scouts. You're going to know Philadelphia inside and out when they come into town. It goes without saying that they're going to know your group as well. Um, how much, as a coaching staff, do you perhaps debate what you need to change for the sake of throwing a wrinkle in the plan versus saying, hey, we're gonna live and die by our identity, by our structure, and we believe that if we just go out and execute, we're gonna give ourselves a chance to win.
Yeah, it's a great question, and that's the fine line. I and we have this debate all the time. I think our approach as a staff is we believe in the structure and the details, and our team identity more than uh, making adjustments of other teams. I think it's important on pre scouts just to identify tendencies in how teams play, whether they're a rush team and they get their D involved, or they pinch on both sides, or what their neutral zone is, or but at the end of the day, I don't think you change really your structure, but you adjust your game plan to maybe expose certain areas of the other team that you believe can get exposed, and also insulate your structure with areas of the other team that you believe they're really good at.
That's interesting. And is it fair to say that, like, all of those adjustments are communicated within a 5-minute video session?
Yeah, it's amazing how many clips you start with and how many you
I
get
know.
down to, and you know what it's like. You just because at the end of the day, the players can only absorb so much, right? And sometimes it's a little bit information overload. So you really have to hone in on what you believe are the true keys. You start with hundreds and hundreds of clips, and by the end, you're at 8 to 12, and it's a 4 minute meeting. So um, it's important to make sure that you emphasize the areas of the game that you want to execute and be good at.
We had Dante Abercrombie, who's the new head coach of Tennessee State University, on the show recently, and he spent some time, spent a season with the Leafs, spent some time with San Jose and Nashville as well. And one of the things that he talked about was, at the NHL level, the you know the art form is really coaches. When you talk about having all those clips and the presentation and how the message gets communicated to the players, especially over an 82 game schedule where I imagine you got to try and keep it interesting. Um, that was what really stood out to him, is like the coaches kind of putting their own flavor, or um, you know, really just showcasing the creativity that goes into that. You've been, you've been around the circuit a couple times now. You're still a young guy, but what have you learned about maybe some ways to, make that message compelling and maybe have it sink in with your players?
Yeah, I think he's bang on. I mean, you play 82 games. You don't want to get stagnant. Every coach has different ways that they do that. Something that I've learned from Greener, he's very engaging when he does his game reviews with the players. I think it kind of keeps them on their toes so that they're, it's not just us dictating to them, hey, you should be here, you should do this. It's what do you see here, what you read here, and I I've picked that up from him and something that I try to implement. When I'm doing our team pre-scouts, and I think when you engage players, you look them in the eye, you ask them questions, they stay engaged longer because they never know when they're going to be up next.
So ask questions.
Yeah, ask questions, keep them engaged. I know I know last year Jacques Martin was really big on having breakout groups. So anytime we would do game reviews, say every 5 or 6 games, instead of him just dictating, we would break out into smaller groups, kind of 4 or 5 players, one assistant coach, and he kind of just float around and whatever the theme or topic or conversation was that day. It was open dialogue, whether it was, you know, breakouts, say, like you'd have 6 or 7 clips and you'd talk through about certain reads for D, certain reads for forwards, coming back into D zone coverage or on our breakouts. And it kind of opens up the dialogue and gets players engaged and truly actually understanding what you're talking about instead of you just telling them,
Sure.
which was something that he picked up from the Pittsburgh Steelers in their training camps over the years, and kind of how they run things.
How often is Jacques around your group?
He's been around a lot this year. He's awesome. He's a wealth
I
of
bet.
knowledge. He's been around a long time. He's got lots of experience. He's a very good man, and we enjoy having him around.
When you get an opportunity just to pick his brain, I mean, I think that's just such a great anecdote, like, his experience of being around the Pittsburgh Steelers. But what might be some other nuggets that you've been able to acquire from him?
Well, I mean, like his experience and he's seen the game change over the course of his career so many times. And what I really value about Jacques is he's adapted to all of those and figured out a way to have success over the course of time. Like you think about when he first started coaching the NHL in kind of the late '80s to where the game's now, and just how much it's changed. I know for me last year working under him, he constantly challenged me, which I loved. I think it forced me to grow as a coach, as a person. Um, so yeah, he's an awesome person.
You mentioned the pre scouts. What else would be on your job description on the Senator staff?
We have very much so like a all inclusive. Something that Greeners I really respect is everyone has a voice and we're kind of all in it together, pulling on the rope in the same direction. There's no, everyone watches my pre-scout. We all watch, the PK. We watch the game review, and I just think it's a great way to do things because every coach sees the game in a different lens, and everyone kind of has a different opinion on players and whatnot. Um, so for me, my responsibility is the pre-scouts. I help Greener with 5-on-5 stuff, and then just do individual the video like the rest of our coaching staff with players after games, and then just the individual skill development for before and after practice.
You spoke at our conference last year. You did a great presentation on the PK. I'm just curious, why the PK?
I did a PK last year. Something that Jacques wanted me to take over once he uh, he took over mid-season there. Um, I loved it. I'm not running the PK this year. Nolan Baumgartner does a great job with it. Um, and runs a different system. So continuing to learn and grow from him and the rest of the staff on that. I love the kill. It was something that when I first started coaching was my responsibility. I was a killer as a player. So anytime Bomber picks my brain, I always get excited talking penalty kill.
Coming from a playing background, I mean, you jumped, right in the deep end in the American Hockey League. But whether it's how you communicate with players in meetings or on the ice when it comes to the skill development side, um, what aspect, I guess, of your approach do you kind of point back to and say, like that's I do it that way because I was a player, and that's maybe how I wanted to be treated or how I appreciated how certain coaches worked with me.
Yeah, I think I don't even remember who said it years ago, and it kind of registered with me. And when I started coaching, I kind of try to think like the quote is think like a player and act like a coach. And sometimes, we get so caught up as coaches in our structure and our details that sometimes we forget, like, these are athletes, these are human beings. Like, let's put ourselves in their shoes. What are they seeing? What are they going through? Why are they playing like this? And it's something that registered with me. And I think just being kind of a younger guy, I play with some of these guys in the minors, this kind of genre. I feel like I can kind of understand this generation of a player. And sometimes it's just important for us coaches to put ourselves in their shoes and think through their lens.
Do you think that it's I know we hear this all the time where people talk about, players are different today, they're more entitled. They want to know why. Like how much of that is just that players have access to a lot more information, they're more informed, and like anybody in any walk of life, when you have more information, you're just probably gonna have higher expectations from whether it's your manager, your coach, or the people around you.
Yeah, I mean, information's power, and I feel like the generation is now we're information hungry. Like, you look at social media, everyone's wants to be up to speed on everything that's going on in the world or the hockey world. And this generation, for whatever reason, they always want to know why and they want instant feedback. And I think it's important for us coaches to kind of walk that fine line between giving them the information that they're craving, but also not letting it consume them or change them. Because at the end of the day, it's a game and it happens fast. And like the access to information, you look at now in the NHL, like there's iPads on the bench. Like,
Wild.
these guys look at everything right after their shift, but it's like, well, why don't we just watch the game and watch, Joe Blow out there that's an elite defender? What's he doing? Instead of, oh, how did I screw that up? So I think it's a fine line, you know, giving feedback and giving information, but also just playing the game.
Yeah, I know they just had the GM meetings, and I'm always curious, or I guess maybe they're going on right now. But at some point, if iPads on the bench ever gets revisited as being necessary, I sense there's a lot of coaches that might not be as enthusiastic about it if given the choice. I want to go back to the PK. I mentioned to you we get. Obviously in our platform we get a ton of search data, and one
Yeah.
of the things that comes up is how to practice the PK. And specifically we'll get a lot of coaches that write in that say, for example, I watched Ben's presentation and it was awesome, but how am I going to translate some of the stuff to my kids when I might be in a an environment where I only get two practices a week, it's 1 hour, and the concern is that if you practice the BK, it's going to result in a lot of kids on one knee on the ice not moving, and as we know, that's not necessarily conducive to player development either.
Yeah. I mean, uh, for me, like, at the grassroots level, and I think this is a little bit of a problem that we have as coaches, and I'm sure it is in minor hockey, is I don't find players nowadays process like they used to, but coaching also has never been as good as it's been like it is nowadays. And I think we always provide players solutions to problems as opposed to letting them figure it out themselves. And I have great debates with Alfie about this, and he's passionate about it. Um, I think from a grassroots level, you have to teach habits and you have to teach reads, and it doesn't really matter what structure you have on a penalty kill. But if you can, work on your angles and work on your stick positioning, your stick on puck, your anticipation. Obviously, you have a little bit of the structure, but for me in minor hockey, to be working on structure, I never had any coaches that coached me in a structured environment till probably minor midget. Like,
Yeah.
and you had to figure out tendencies and patterns, and I'm kind of going all over the board here, but like players now, they're one dimensional uh, sport athletes. They're
Yeah.
not athletic. They're not identifying 2-on-1s playing soccer or racket sports and learning about angles. And I just think it kind of all ties together in the sense. So long-winded answer. I think you have to, at a grassroots level, teach habits and details. Um, you know, on a penalty kill, like if you have a box, is like where should your stick be? Where's the offensive player's 2-on-1? Is he a threat to score? Is there a one-timer threat? Are you closing inside out or outside in? These kind of fundamental details, I think, are way more important than actual systematic structure.
So would it be fair to say that, just some really granular drills, like as you said, angling that, may not be necessarily specific to the PK, or drills where players are forced, they're just working on stick on puck, again, not in a PK specific environment, that like building up those skills ultimately are going to translate into players, making
Absolutely.
plays in PK. Yeah.
Absolutely. Small area games where you have odd numbers, or there's 2-on-1s in small
Yeah.
areas, or there's 3-on-2s, identifying stick position. And it works on both sides of the puck. Offensively, are you trying to find a one timer? Are you setting a pick? Are you creating space for your buddy? I think they're all kind of tied in together. But I think coaches now, and we're guilty to it in the NHL, is like, yeah, there has to be structure, but at the end of the day, you're not out there making the reads. If we can provide them with the structure and the support to help them learn, um, and make the appropriate reads, they're the ones that have to get the job done. So I think if we can do that at a grassroots level, it's only going to benefit the individual players.
Do you think sometimes coaches need to, I think we're so result driven, right? Like we almost want to see that improvement. We want to see the structure because then it proves to us that it's sinking in. But do you think
Yeah.
sometimes coaches just need to trust more that, well, it may not be evident in the moment that players are acquiring knowledge and they are getting better, and that, over time it'll show up?
Yeah, I believe that. I mean, if you at a grassroots level, if you can uh, teach the kids the game of hockey, the details that are involved in it, and get them to understand, um, and be work ethic and compete driven, I think they're going to only benefit more than a coach that's going to teach them X's and O's from a young age. Because the one thing that everyone values, whether you're in junior or the NHL, is hockey sense. And there's so many skill coaches nowadays that do all these fun, cool drills, and players have never been more skilled. But I also don't think players process like they used to.
Yeah. You know what? It's so funny. So last week I was down in Ann Arbor, University of Michigan, just prepping for next year's conference, and had a chance to go watch Michigan practice. And it's a Monday, and I believe they did 6 small area games back to back to back to back. And I think sometimes we think about small area games as like that's the cookie, right? Like that's the thing that you tell the players, like, hey, if you work really hard at the other stuff, then you get to just play this game. And we're just going to play, and play's great. But just I just observed like the enthusiasms the players had, how hard they were competing, they were chirping each
Yeah.
other. It was awesome. But like after practice, Coach Narado takes me in the office and he breaks me down here's the things we were working on, and the players don't even know they're working on it. But
Yeah.
here's the things that we're taking away or trying to instill in each drill. I just be curious, like how much would say small area games be a part of your practice arsenal?
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. And I think he's bang on that. Like you can work on so many systematic or detail oriented things in small area games, adding the competing competitiveness and kind of game situations. In the NHL, I mean, every team's different. I know in the minors we did small area games to start practice every day, and then at the end. The NHL is a little bit different with just the schedule, but we probably do one small area game kind of every practice, whether it's a cross ice or some sort of power play, small area game. Um, because at the end of the day, you can, like you said, you can accomplish certain areas of your game that you want to address, but it also, players love it and it brings out that competitive juice.
You guys, you mentioned off the top, you got a lot of skill, a lot of young talent on your roster. What are those players like? Whether it's Brady Kachuk, uh, Tim Stutzel, like what do they expect from the coaches, and what questions might they ask in terms of them, um, you know, looking for agency over their own game?
Yeah, I mean, I had a friend that was at a morning skate the other day, and it was awesome to see. Obviously, Tim and Brady are stars in this league, and Brady was the first guy on the ice, and Timmy was the last guy on the ice. And these players are driven to get better every day. They're willing to put in the work, and they want answers of how not only one they're going to get better individually, but two how we're going to get better as a team. And it's on us as coaches to provide them that information, motivate them, push them, and hold them accountable to what they want to accomplish for our team, themselves personally, to ultimately get us to where we want to go.
You guys have a new goaltender this year, um, in Linus Allmark. And I was talking with a coach the other day, who was in a position where they had a new goaltender, really good goaltender, and he mentioned he's like he didn't anticipate how much the goaltender style of play would influence how they maybe had to play in their own zone. And that might be just, off dump ins and how they're transitioning pucks to the defenseman on breakouts. It might be just in their D zone coverage. But, we just had a really interesting conversation and just things like, how they play, when the puck's behind the goal line, how, what their size is like, do they, how do they want defensemen to box out? I'd just be curious, in a situation where you do bring in a new goaltender, how much of a conversation is it to say like, are we, stepping back and maybe examining how can we best support the goaltender, maybe how they play versus just saying, hey, we're going to put them in the net and expect that they stop the puck.
Yeah, I think that's it's kind of a fine line. Obviously, you want to put your goaltender in a situation to succeed. I think that's more kind of special teams driven and certain looks that our goalies would rather see. So it's predictable for them
Yeah.
when there are odd number situations, even off the rush. I know we've talked about it a decent amount with our staff and our goaltending coach Justin Peters and our goaltenders about how we want to play it, what we want to give up, what our reads are, and just make it predictable for them. But it is amazing what it does for a group. Obviously, you bring in a goalie like Linus and having Forsey, who's playing great hockey right now too. What it does for your group, just confidence wise, and their calming demeanor, and it, it it allows, I find, your group to be more aggressive because they have that underlying confidence in the last line of defense to bail them out. And we're a pressure team. We want to pressure all over the ice. That's kind of our style of play. And I think, having the goaltending that we have affords us to do that because we feel confident that if we do give up things for whatever reason, that they're going to have our back.
You grew up in a hockey family. I don't think I really appreciated, just how maybe ingrained you are in the hockey scene there in Ottawa. Um, uh, my first question would be when when you decided to retire as a player, what led to you deciding on a career in coaching versus a career in management?
Yeah, I didn't know really what I wanted to do. To be honest with you, I didn't think my career was going to end that early. I never really planned for it to be like that. Um, Basically, a long story short is I got concussed in training camp in Pittsburgh one year.
Yeah.
I had a long history of concussions. Fast forward to December, doctors and my family kind of made the decision that it was time for me to be done. And very fortunate, Mike Vellucci was the head coach in Wilkes-Barre at the time. Um, and I was under contract with them, and he's like, I don't know what you want to do post playing, but I think you think you'd be a great coach if you want to join our staff. I
No
can
way.
put you to work. You can be our eye in the sky. I'll get you to help with some individual player development. You can learn the video. You know, Basically just be a fly in the wall and learn from them. That group with JD Forrest there. And yeah, so he got me into coaching, and ever since that day, I was like, wow, I firmly believe kind of everything happens in life for a reason, and obviously, I always thought I would be a hockey player, but things happen, and I honestly believe that I played hockey to coach, and my playing career kind of set me up for the next kind of chapter of my life, and so very grateful to not only Mike Bellucci but the Wilkes-Barre group there, and allowing me to kind of help and get my toes wet to see whether coaching was what I wanted to do. And like I said, I fell in love with it and knew that I would never wanted to be a manager.
What so when you first get that opportunity to, sit in on the other side of the curtain and be in those coaching meetings, what might be something where you were like, huh, like I didn't anticipate this or I didn't think this was part of the gig?
I didn't realize how bad the players were. Uh, it's funny just to see it from the other side. You get so emotional as a coach, and your
Totally.
expectations for every player is so high, and it's just funny to see it from the other side. A guy has 1-1 and he's +2, and you win 3-2, and he turned over a puck late, and he's just getting ripped up and down in the coach's room after the game, and you're like, let's take a deep breath here, guys. We won at home, and he had one
Yeah.
and one, and he was pretty darn good, But no, it's all driven by right intentions. But that
Yeah.
was something that was definitely an eye opener for me, seeing it on the other side of like, okay,
No,
this
for
is
sure.
interesting.
What, if you were advising anybody that wanted to get into coaching, specifically at the professional level, what might be? I mean, I just think now, like, there's so many specialists, right? Like, whether that's in the part of the game you're responsible for, whether that's in player development, it's video, etc. What might be some of the skill sets where you might advise somebody to say, if you want to be a pro coach, go spend time doing these things because this is going to help you, bring value to a pro, a program in a league that's all about winning.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think people don't really understand how much work is involved in coaching. I know I definitely didn't being a player. I didn't realize, and nowadays with how much video is involved, just on a teaching level, an analytical level, a pre-scout level, all the details that are involved in any sort of day to day. As far as one thing that you can do. I think you got to stick to your strengths and separate yourself from the rest of the herd and what you do well. Whether you're an X's and O's guy or you're more of a relationship guy or you have a specialty with a special team that you have success with. You see coaches in the NHL that they're a power play guy and they've been a power play coach for 20 years in the NHL and they'll always
Yeah.
have a job because of how valuable special teams are. So I think if you can just differentiate yourself with whatever that unique skill set is that's what you have to do.
When you made, I don't know if it was a phone call or how the conversation goes with your dad, Randy, that you wanted to get into coaching. What was his reaction, or what advice might he have given you?
Yeah, he was obviously very supportive. Him and my mom have supported me and my brothers with whatever we've done. I think he was obviously happy that I was going to stay involved in the game, and much like I was appreciative that they were giving me a chance. And after that year, that ended up being COVID. I didn't know what was going to happen. Obviously, hockey
Yeah.
shut down. I always knew I wanted to coach, but I also needed a job. So I was calling everyone under the sun for advice and guidance, and at the end of the day, was lucky enough to get an opportunity in Belleville with that group down there with Troy Mann and um, yeah, my dad. Anything stuff that he had just reinforced in me and my brothers in life. If you're going to do something, do it hard, do it well, and put everything you have into it.
What were conversations like at the dinner table growing up?
It was all hockey all the time. My
Was
poor
it? Yeah.
mother. Yeah,
Yeah.
three sons. My
Any
dad.
daughter? All three boys?
Yeah, three boys. Plus my dad. My poor mom. Even to this day, like we get back together as a family around the holidays, and my mom just rolls her eyes because that's all the conversation is. Um, so my older brother's still a big fan. My younger brother's coaching the OHL in Oshawa, and um, it's hockey all the time. My dad had her trained well growing up. She would always assess mine and my brother's play away from the puck and how I was in the face-off circle. So
No way.
that's the report that she gave my dad after the game.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You know, so you play junior A hockey in the Ottawa area for Nipawin or Nipian, pardon me.
Yeah.
You go out to Penticton and then you go to Clarkson. You spend 4 years there. You're a draft pick of the Boston Bruins. You're the captain your last 2 years. I'd be curious to know, during your time in Clarkson, that program started to trend upwards and had, I believe your senior season had one of its best years in a long time. You're playing under Casey Jones. What might you take away from Casey and just looking at sort of the arc that you're at with the Senators right now? What might you learn from that experience as a player that lends itself to just how you those incremental steps you have to take as a program to become competitive on a nightly basis?
Yeah. I loved my time at Clarkson. We had a great class. We had a great group of guys there. Casey came in after my first year. Casey's a high, passionate, high energy, cares about his players type of guy. And that's something that I value. As a player and a coach, someone that obviously cares about the success of you and the program and how much he lived and breathed in it every single day. And that's something that I try to take with me coaching now. Like there's no bad days. We get paid to coach a sport, and
Yeah.
I'm so lucky. And he's a guy that I leaned on early on. Obviously he's moved on to Cornell now. He's a great person, and I really like playing for him.
What as you guys kind of took those steps as a program, what were some of the building blocks, be it from a tactical perspective or just like habits within the game that, you feel are important to, again, just, find that consistency and, um, find your best game on a nightly basis?
Yeah, Casey was good X's and O's coach, and he was a good motivator. Like when I puck drop on Friday night at Cheel, like we were ready to rip the paint off the walls. He had that kind of aura about him. And the other thing I think Casey does a great job of is he's an unbelievable recruiter, and I think he kind of tapped into maybe a different type of recruiting plan than they had in previous regimes. Just again, like we talked about earlier, how the game kind of evolved. He kind of went outside the local kind of Ottawa, Montreal, Toronto area, started recruiting some kids from the BCHL, started going heavier into the USHL. And I think he did a great job, and he built that program kind of is where it is today. And JF going back there to his alma mater, he had that pro experience. I think the program's in a great spot right now.
Later in your career, when you're in the minors, you play for Bruce Cassidy with the Providence Bruins, and we've had Bruce on the show before, and talked about just his career arc as a coach. Where he was the head coach at a young age in Washington, and really had to go back and not reinvent himself, but certainly didn't have any guarantees that he would ever be a head coach again in the National Hockey League. And obviously, he's run with that opportunity, but back when you played for him, what stands out to you about that experience?
Yeah, I had Butchie my first kind of 2.5 years a pro. Butch he is one of the best hockey minds I've been around. He was really good for me my first couple years. He's a very hard, demanding coach. Daryl Sutter is he played for Daryl over the years, and that's kind of how his style of coaching. Um, Extremely high standards for every single player. And what I respected about Butch was it didn't matter if you were a first line guy or a fourth line guy. Like he held you to a standard. Obviously, the offensive guys had a little bit longer leash, and he understood that side of the game, being kind of an offensive defenseman. But something that he like Butchie had a really good feel for who was going early in games, and I think he had the recognition to know of who could kind of work themselves out of uh, a funk if they weren't going early, and some guys that weren't. And had no trouble making line combinations changes early. So I mean, Butchie, he's hard. There's definitely no gray area. He's always honest, which sometimes players don't want to hear, but you always respect honesty. And there was never any gray area with Butchie, and he's someone that I lean on to this day. Obviously being on the other side now as a coach, he's someone that I respect a lot and have learned a lot from over the years.
During your travels, you played in some great sports markets. You mentioned Jacques Martin, getting the opportunity to go to Pittsburgh Steelers training camp. Have you had the opportunity to expand your wings and maybe look at other sports and find some inspiration from a coaching perspective?
I haven't yet, no. To be honest, yeah, I'd like to. I think there's so much you can learn from other sports and other industries. Just the way different sports and coaches, how they teach and how they interact with their players. I guess I haven't been doing it long enough, or maybe I just need to expand my wings a little bit and reach out. But definitely something that I would be eager to dive into.
Well, if we gave you a magic wand and you could be a fly on the wall in a coach's office or just to see how they operate for a day in another sport, anybody stand out who you might jump at an
Uh,
opportunity?
Probably Bill Belichick. I know he's not coaching now, but I would have loved to seen
Yeah.
just his not only his interactions with players, but just his prep and how detailed and prepared I feel like his teams were over the years to have those dynasties in New England.
Do you get a chance to hear him on like the Pat McAfee show or the Manning Cast or anything like that
I
this season?
haven't. No.
It's so good. It's the best.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I should have a listen to those.
Yeah, his insight's unbelievable. Um, Ben, as you kind of, again, early part of your coaching journey here, what would be some areas where you look at and say, hey, like over the next couple years, here's some areas where I want to invest some time and maybe sharpen my skill set?
Great question. I mean, I think just being kind of process driven, continuing to grow every day. I think um, public speaking. I don't think you can ever be too good of a public speaker, addressing players, being clear, being concise. I think that's an area that I can continue to grow in. Um, Obviously, I learn a ton on a day to day, like just with our staff and the experience that they have. Um, just X's and O's wise. And like I said earlier, like very inclusive staff, so you hear everyone's opinions on all sorts of systems and different scenarios and line matchups and thought processes and tendencies and um, but yeah, I think the one area is public speaking. I don't like I said, I don't think you can ever get too too good at it.
I'm curious about that, man, because I mean, I didn't know you that well before you came on stage at TCS Live, but you nailed it, and that's an intimidating room to get up in front of. What did your prep look like for that? Because I imagine it's not like you get a lot of reps in advance.
Yeah, no, and I got good advice a couple of years ago. Working here in Ottawa, Davis Payne, I think, is an excellent public speaker. He's
Great
very
guy.
uh, clear, concise. His message delivered extremely well. And I was just kind of picking his brain about, like I do to other coaches around the league, about how to grow as a young coach. And one of his advice was like, if you ever have the opportunity to speak, just just do it. Just do it. That's the only way that you're going to get better. And I'd be lying to you if I said I wasn't nervous going to that to the coach's site and speaking in front of that group. That's the first time I've ever done kind of something like that since my
Yeah.
grade six public speaking, and it's a lot different than standing up in a room in front of a group of players or standing up in the locker room as a player. It's a completely different ball game, and there's that stuff's more calculated, emotional as a player, but the preparation and how you can engage the audience and how you need to be clear and concise and deliver a message that can relate to everyone and everyone can kind of understand. And again, it's just it kind of worked out well when you guys reached out and Painter kind of gave me that advice. It kind of coincided with each other, and I thought it'd be a great opportunity to kind of give back and also selfishly grow myself in front of a big group.
No, it was awesome. It's funny you say that because I would say that that's probably the motivation for a lot of the pro coaches that take part is just to flex that muscle and get out of their comfort zone a little bit. And
Yeah,
yeah, speaking of Painter, what a wagon they've got going over there in
yeah,
Winnipeg right now. Holy
yeah.
smokes!
They're rolling pretty good, and his power play's rolling.
Yeah, it sure is, sure is. Ben, before I let you go, just we ask this of everybody, but just any books, podcasts, resources that you've tapped into during your career that you found to be helpful?
That's a great question. I'm probably lacking on that right now. I got three young kids at home, and I feel like I'm
You
trying
got
to just
three
keep.
kids?
Yeah,
Oh,
so
man, you're in the thick of it.
that's I'm in the thick of it. I read the Energy Bus. What was that last summer? It was a good one. Um, but I mean, I listen to these things on the coaches site or the NHL Coaches Association. Um, but I think the biggest thing for me is just like networking and learning from other people.
Yeah.
Whether you find a podcast or you're picking up the phone and calling a coach that you've never even met before to pick his brain on certain things. And it's amazing. I got that advice early on, and I was kind of skeptical of it, but there's a lot of good people in this industry, and everyone wants to help. And I think people would be pleasantly surprised of um, how awesome people are just to take a call and talk shop.
Yeah, I agree with you. No, it is. It is. I think that's the one. Just part of our own kind of journey going through this is just how accommodating everybody is, and I think at the end of the day, people recognize that it's everybody. It's a continuous work in progress. We're all trying to get better. So
Yeah.
that's great advice, man. Well, hey, listen. Again, really excited to kind of track what's going on there in Ottawa. Don't want to jinx anything, but since it's not
No,
too long until you guys have a wagon of your own, um, say hi to Greener for us. And again, really
I will for
appreciate you
sure.
taking time out to join us.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys.